Lovely Jess. Welcome to Spotlight Fridays. I'm so excited to speak to you, and I'm very excited to have you here. And I'm sure so are the people that are joining us live and will listen to this recording later.
Thanks,
How are
Anna. It's
you?
really lovely to
How
be
are
here.
you today?
I'm very good. It's really lovely to be here, and I'm grateful for the opportunity.
I know that we caught up in person in Melbourne yesterday,
Mhm.
and today you're joining us from Sydney. So that was a very early wake up call. So I like your commitment. Thank you so much.
Yes, 4 a.m., but lots of coffee, and here we are.
Ready to go. So let's, I don't think you need an introduction. I think everyone knows you. You've been doing this for a very long time. You show up on LinkedIn in the most wonderful way. I absolutely love reading your posts. We've been connected for some time. We've had wonderful conversations as well. But today, I would like to ask you a few questions that will benefit, hopefully, the audience as well. You've built a very successful agency, and I believe you've been in business now for almost 13 years.
Yes, 13 years. Yes, this year. Yep.
And I think you've come from a very humble background. So when you started the agency, you had no idea
Mhm.
how to do it, how to build the business, and here you are. You have some amazing clients on board. Everyone knows Jess, and you're also an incredible contributor to the community. And you have your own e-commerce summit where you don't sell anything, you just educate people. Am
Mhm.
I correct in my very brief introduction?
Yes. Well, I mean, you got it all in one. It's very interesting the perception that you have because I always feel that I need an introduction, but when you're in the build of it all, I think it's really easy to get lost in the building and not really have that 10,000 foot view and see things as others might see them, which is really interesting. But it's a lovely position to be in. Like I've been doing this, as you said, for 13 years, and the early years were really hard because I did come from a very different background. I was the executive assistant to the CEO of the apparel group, and I had this incredible opportunity to learn from him, and then I took the leap to start the agency without any marketing experience, any agency experience or exposure. So I think I did things definitely the hardest way, but and to be honest, in the beginning, I really didn't know what this would look like. I just always knew that I wanted something bigger for myself, and I wanted to build something that was my own. And I think if I'm being completely transparent about it, uh, when I was an executive assistant, I found it really, really difficult to get an opportunity that aligned with what I wanted to do, even entry level marketing roles. Without that experience, even though it was entry level, I wasn't given that opportunity. And I tried for quite some time. And I thought, well, why not do this the hardest way and give myself the opportunity by starting a business doing exactly what I thought I wanted to do, which was really get into marketing and advertising.
Isn't it incredible? I picked up on it from quite a few of your posts how passionate you are about team development and
Mhm.
giving this opportunity to people in the market. And I understand why, because you've come from that background and no one has given you that opportunity from EA to running such a successful agency. This is quite incredible. I actually want to unpack this a little bit more because it's a very crowded space,
Mhm.
and yet you went. Sometimes it's good not to know what's ahead of
Mhm.
you. I think so that you're less afraid. It's I think. What was it for you? What do you think mattered most in getting you there?
Really great question. I think for me, and this is probably the weirdest way to answer this question, but I've always known the kind of woman that I wanted to be. And I think through that, I always knew the kind of business or career that I wanted to build. And that was really aligned with who I wanted to be in the world and how I wanted to exist in the world. And that is very closely aligned with the things that I value. And I think I just really saw a gap so early on in value aligned agencies. And even when I started 13 years ago, agencies still had a really bad reputation for over promising and under delivering. And that really became the song and dance of so many brands. And I felt like I was looking at the biggest mountain to climb in challenging the status quo. Um, and I looked at it so many different ways of how I could create the change. And and it doesn't come from talking about it. It comes from doing it. And I learned along the way that specifically that looks like showing the proof over the promise. And I think agencies are really, really good at doubling down on the promise, that big blue sky that you get on the pitch call. The big 10x or 20x that you're promised, and the very senior team that you're promised on the call that might not ever really eventuate. And I think I really tuned into what I was hearing brand side, and tried to build around that. And it was a very, very slow way to grow a company, because the fastest way to grow was to say yes to every single brand. And it meant that we didn't have a type. And it started that way because I had no idea how to get a client in the early days. I had no business acumen experience, and so I started in the same way I think every agency does. I had an interest in marketing and specifically e-commerce, and I really wanted to sort of grow it from there, and it was incredibly difficult, hard to make a name for myself, and I would say that was the first 7 years. So it's really only the last, really, I'd say 4 to 5 years that we've been able to pull ourselves out of obscurity. And 100% that has been through the work that we do in the community, which is a huge resource invest and massive financial investment for us over the years. Um, a lot of risk, but an incredible upside. And that upside is not just winning big deals and working with the clients that we truly are just so privileged to work with now, but it's building the community. And as you were saying, Anna, it's now being in a position 13 years on to hold a door open that, I for other people that I've been able to open for myself. And that has just been both brand side and agency side. It's just been just such an incredible byproduct.
So, in listening this is admirable, Jess, because I would say that the majority of startup businesses would go speed over quality, excuse me. I would say, but you chose depth over speed.
Mhm.
This is that would constitute that alone, that decision will constitute a slower growth for sure. And as you said, it's taking 7 years. So looking back, what kind of decisions helped the business grow over time rather than in short spikes? Well, definitely that educational part,
Mm.
I would say, and the promise, the uh,
Proof of a
not the
problem.
correct, yes.
Look, I think it's going to sound incredibly cliche, but I think it's because it's simple. I think it's practical, and I think that's important. Um, and it's the power of saying no, even when it feels like a hell yes because the revenue says so. But it is saying no to the quick win, um, especially when you know that they're not aligned. They don't meet the ICP. That would have been a very quick way for us to grow, just to open the door. And there were definitely times when very early years when uh, we tested that because we had to, because it's survival. Um, and as we sort of grew as a company, and we had that experience working with brands that weren't quite a fit for us, we just got really clear on our type. And I think a lot of businesses really, really talk about this, and very, very rarely do I see it in practice, in its truest form, to work so close in alignment with your ICP. And I'm so clear on what that looks like for us. But I think as well, in the same way brands really understand their product and who their product is for, I'm the same. I understand my product and the quality of my team and how exceptional they are. And so I know where we're positioned. I know where we fit in the market, and I know how to serve the brands that meet that ICP. And also, I think a lot of that, like I guess the hard part of the saying no is actually saying to no to brands that tick a lot of the boxes. And actually, a recent experience last year, we went to tender with this incredible brand, and and they mapped out their targets, and we worked backwards on the numbers, and we ran them in so many different ways, and there was no way that it was achievable. Um, and we were honest and transparent about that, and we lost the deal. They went with an agency that gave them the promise, regardless of the proof. We led with the proof, our case studies, the brands that we work with, and our team and our skills. And that agency churned in 3 months, which 90 days is the industry average, which is wild. It is wild to me that you would stick with a partner that is so integral to the growth of the business for 90 days. But I at the time, I just know, especially now, like it's easier for me to say no, regardless of what's sort of being dangled in front of us, because I know that there's enough to eat for all of us.
And you run it by your values, which is proof of a promise. And that's where you know what is the hell yes and what is the hell no.
Yeah.
I wonder, did you have a very clear view of your ICP from the beginning, or it has evolved over time?
No, I knew from the beginning. So I have what we call internally, I've created, we call it the Dream 100, and it's a list of 100 brands that we want to work with. And from day one, it started there. And so, which it's actually really crazy to think back. 13 years ago, a brand that we work with, Lorna Jane, was on that list. And when that came into fruition, uh, I think I think it was a lot of very big green lights of all of the right decisions that I made along the way. But a big part of that is not just making that about me and what brands I want to work with, but then opening that up to my team. And so each year, giving them the opportunity to feed in and on the brands that they want to work with, and I think that's really important. I think I am responsible for creating a really good experience, and I'm acutely aware of the experience my team have. And I know that it is determined by the work that we bring in and the culture that I build around that and the values that we stand by. Because you can have values, for sure, they can exist on your site, but if you don't stand by them and live through them, uh, then I think it's really really easy for things to go south, and you start, saying yes to all of the wrong things.
I've heard about your list 100. That was very impressive. How often do you update that?
Often we have more brands on our Dream 100, but that we have worked with. So much of it has come into fruition, more so over the last 3 years, which I think perception is such an industry, such an interesting thing, when we think about it, because I think if you were to look at evocative and the narrative around what we have built, I think perception would lead you to believe that we're this bigger agency, um, and we're not. We're lean. We're very very selective. We are low volume, high quality, high caliber brand, and very aligned with our ICP. And I think having something to go off like our Dream 100 list is, it's easy to follow because we have a bit of a north star there. But there's been quite a few brands that we've ticked off that list. I remember the moment that we found out we were at our e-commerce growth summit event, and we found out we had a verbal yes from Dish, and it was a brand that Bella, my head of owned media, it was her number one brand. And just having that conversation with her and telling her that we had just closed that account and we got to work on that brand, a brand that we love and we really get behind, like, and just is so closely aligned with our ICP, and their values as a brand are so closely aligned with ours. That feeling for me, regardless of how big we get, the deals that we win, the things that we achieve, that just hasn't left. It still feels equally as wonderful. I think I just view it as just such a privilege when brands give us the opportunity. Um, so yeah, it's nice to have a bit of a North Star. It's nice to have something visual that we can follow. And I think something that I can sort of sit with my team and say, okay, well, what are we building together? Let's run alongside each other and build this together. And I think that's important. For me, it is anyway.
I know it is because you speak a lot about it. So let's just talk about your team, the Bella and the rest of the team. I know you've invested heavily in relationships and education. Where have you seen that translate into commercial outcomes? I'm sure
Mhm.
Bella was very excited about the news. It sounded like it was a 10 out of 10 client for you.
Yeah, look, I think the education component of it has been just such an incredible growth lever for us, both internally and externally. Internally, because I'm able to give this opportunity to my team to experience things maybe at a faster rate than they would have. And I think just to pause there and what I mean by that, when it comes to opportunities that are given to people within a business, typically those opportunities are given based on I wouldn't necessarily say tenure, but title. And I know this because being a CEO and founder, I am given so many opportunities to speak on a lot of incredible stages. And when I started to transfer that over to my team and give them those opportunities, um, I just wasn't getting that cut through, and I wasn't able to pull that seat up at the table. And that was really important to me for my team and for their career progression. And and that's really where the summit was born. Yes, educating and seeing the gap in the market to educate brand side, but to give that opportunity for my team to teach and also to show that we actually know what we're doing. We actually know what we're talking about. And I think that's really important. And I always just think if you are good enough to teach, and I mean, transparently, the brands that come to our summit, we have the Princess Polly team bring their entire team to learn from us. We have, Nike, we had, I think, 10 of their team members come to our summit. And we have the most incredible national and global brands come to learn from our team and also other experts. And I think for us, I mean, it's just had incredible reciprocity. And I think that's just one part of it. And then I think as well, like being able to educate our clients. I think one of the biggest fears I hear and see in so many agencies, and certainly I think it comes from the top, from an agency side, is the fear in giving it all away. The fear in um, showing brands how to do it and that they won't be needed anymore. But I just don't have that fear because, one, I think it's really important that brands are empowered to understand the channels that they're leveraging, understand the right metrics that are aligned with their business goals, and how they can measure against that internally. Their teams are empowered to do the same. I think it's really important that brands understand that. But for us as an agency and our positioning, because we lean into that, we have full empowerment sessions with the brands that we work with, to upskill and teach them because I think it's important. And it's had just an incredible impact on the retention, not just of our internal team because I'm able to give them opportunities, but also because we're educating in-house brand side teams, and I think there's a huge gap in the market for that. But I think an even bigger gap for executors who are brave enough to lean into their experience and talk about it and teach.
I think it's so powerful. I would like you to talk a little bit more about Summit for people that may have not, for some reason, come across it.
Mhm.
But it's interesting what you're mentioning, what transparency does for your business is actually the complete opposite. So when people think you just, I think, turning the entire agency model on its head. Well, good for you here. And this is why there are the results. But I really like that transparency, that educational approach, and let the brands decide what they want to do with it. Because having the knowledge, that doesn't mean that it will lead to exceptional execution.
Mhm.
We know that. That's why agencies exist, and that's why certain work gets outsourced.
Mhm.
Because sometimes people and brands don't want to put more people on payroll, but it also doesn't mean that it's going to work out for them too. So good for you for taking that approach. And I know that Summit exists purely for educational purposes. This is educational platform only. No
Mhm.
one allowed to sell any services or pitch their business. Is that true?
That is true. Yeah. So we have held Summit now. We're going to be doing our eighth and ninth Summit event, which is something I'm really proud of. It's very natural thing for me to say. I can't imagine we're here, but I actually can imagine. I imagined it from the beginning. I saw this gap, having attended so many industry events, and it's not to say that they don't serve a purpose and they're not incredible in their own way, but if I think about what I wanted to learn, when I was coming up and the opportunities I wanted, or the resources and tools I wanted access to, I think a lot of that really just came down to, I think, me wanting to better educate the market and seeing an opportunity to do that. But all of these events that exist, it, there's a lot of selling that happens, and the feedback from brands, and this is not just my perception, but the feedback is that brands just don't want to be sold to. They don't want to go to. They don't want to spend 8 hours away from doing the work that they know that they have to come back um, to be sold to by every agency, tech partner, and service provider. And so by design, I built an event that is purely based on education. And so even though we host it, we don't pitch, we don't sell, or anyone who is on stage does not sell. We have the most incredible um, tech partners that have been with us from day one, and truly, it's been our partners, Lexa, Yotpo, Athos Commerce, backing me from day one before anyone even knew we existed. Um, and really saw the vision of what we wanted to build. And I think maybe as well because they saw the same gap. Um, and we hear from brands that there is really no great education out there. And so what fascinates me, what I'm really really interested in, is not having C-suite, CEOs, CMOs, the same people passing the mic around the room at an event. I want to see what I call the hidden layer on stage. That is the opportunity I want to give them to talk about the in platform or on channel expertise that they have that actually drives that growth. And having done that now 7 times, watching brands get on stage uh, at every level, talking about the tools, the tech, the strategies that actually drive growth. And it's been so wonderful, a great learning for our team too, to understand what that looks like brand side, for us to be able to see where the gaps exist brand side as well, which has been great for the evolution of our service. But it's also given me this incredible opportunity to platform people that might not have been platformed because they don't have that shiny title. And so Summit exists for the executors. It exists for teams that want to learn, and I think it exists for people who just want to be given an opportunity that might not have otherwise gotten it because they don't have the credentials or the following. And I'm just very very passionate about
I can see that.
that.
And it's a brilliant concept. And I'm not surprised that the likes of Lexa and Yotpa backed you up from the start. I know both teams very well. I have a lot of time for them. I'm a massive fan. But they also, I think, knowing all the teams, I can see how your values, all of your values, line up perfectly. Because Yotwa and the likes of Lexa lead with that authenticity and transparency and education as well. So this is the perfect start alignment. Well done.
It feels
Speaking of speaking of shiny titles, I do have a question for you. If a CEO
mhm.
asked you to explain how acquisition, conversion, and retention work together without any buzzwords, how would you answer that question?
Okay, this is a very, very good question, Anna. All right, the best way that I can explain this, and this is pretty much where we start, and this all really forms part of how we educate as well, is we look at it like a growth, well, what we call the growth trifecta. And this is predominantly for a lot of Australian brands that are headquartered in Australia, because the growth levers are different for global brands. But the way that we look at it is uh, the triangle of search, social, and retention. And that typically looks like email. And so one of the things that we see pretty much with every brand, big or small, is that they're trying to do too much. They're overcomplicating the growth equation. And, I think there's so much noise in the industry about, these magical strategies and all of these shiny things, but really it comes down to the foundations. And the foundations, from our view and what we see work and really move the needle, is getting those three right. And typically for Australian brands, that looks like Meta ads, Google ads, and email marketing. And in this market, we see that predominantly sit with Klaviyo, purely because it is still best in class tech. And that foundation of three really strong growth levers is something that I think brands tend to not focus on getting right. They add in too many other components before they're ready. And we like to start with the basics or the foundations first, and not overcomplicate growth. And I think the other part of that, and why we look at it as a trifecta, is that they all need to work alongside one another, speak the same language. The strategies need to intertwine. And I think when we have a look at siloing these channels and siloing the metrics, or even a lack of understanding of on platform or on channel metrics, we see that really slow down growth. I think especially where, and you would be surprised at how many even top mid-market to enterprise brands still get stuck on metrics that just don't matter, like ROAS, or looking at performance in a silo um, uh, per channel. And so we like to have a bigger view of what that looks like. And we simplify it by the three growth levers. And it's just having the right foundations in place. We start there and then we build. And we do that aligned with the data. And profitably, if we can, from sort of day one. And I think that's really important, that we're leveraging the right tech to do that as well. And that's why our tech partners, we're so invested with the relationships. And I do want to say this, and I'm going to be selfish whilst I have the platform to do it, but agencies are leveraged so much in the industry, and incentivized to back a platform blindly and be given kickbacks to do it. I just have zero interest in that. And I think it really plays into the agency burn and churn model, because we are incentivized by status of having these really big, titles that exist within, Meta, Google, or Klaviyo. And it's so unfortunate, because there are agencies that do truly incredible work that are never given the opportunity because they don't meet that status criteria. But what brands need to know is that just because an agency might have, this really wonderful, shiny status, it doesn't necessarily correlate to really strong performance. And that is why proof is so important, not the promise. And the status is the promise. The proof is the work. It is the tenure. It is the time that an agency has been with a brand. And the proof in that, I think, is really important. So we try and simplify it and back everything by data and proof.
I really like how you phrased it. I haven't heard anyone saying that before. Proof of a promise.
Mhm.
And this, it's so powerful, and I think you lead by example because all your content that you're putting out there, I could see you are including a lot of proof. You don't preach, but you just show and educate what good looks like. And by you just explaining, and you articulated it so well, how it's important to uh, let simplicity lead over complexity.
Mhm.
We as humans, I think, especially with the shiny titles, humans, we
Mhm.
love complexity because it looks like we are the smartest people in the room.
Mhm.
But I think the simplicity is essential and it's the key. And the setting the right foundation. It's no point adding any furniture or shiny objects to your house if your foundation is very shaky. So, and you clearly articulated what that foundation means in this busy digital marketing world. And I'm not going to start the conversation about TikTok with you because that could be a sensitive subject. We touched on it in our face to face discussion yesterday.
Mhm.
But Jess, I've actually have not even covered 30% of questions that I've had for you. But I think we need to organize the part too. I knew it will be very in-depth discussion because you speak from your heart and you're very transparent. And I had a question to you about trust and how you keep the relationship with the clients. You seem to sustain them over time. But I think the answer to my own question is exactly what you've just mentioned before. It's proof of a promise.
Mhm.
And I love your example when you lost the tenure because you told the client that it's actually those targets are not achievable. And they found out the hard way 3 months down the track. So I'm not surprised that you lead the thriving agency and you lead the thriving team. The perception of you and your agency is huge on the market. You know, I know a lot of people, and a lot of people know me. So believe me, everyone talks about you a lot. And it's been such a pleasure having you on. I know it was a very early flight and 4 o'clock wake up call, but I'm very grateful for everything what you do for the community, for your clients, the current and I'm sure the future ones as well. And thank you for turning the whole concept on its head because you know I'm the biggest disruptor. I love disrupting the concept that's been around for 20 years and no one cares. But so thank you for joining me on that quest, and thank you for giving me your time and having this conversation. You're an absolute delight to speak to, and would love to continue our conversation. It's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much.
Likewise. Thanks, Anna.
And thank you to everyone who has joined us live and who will watch